Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching fourth part of What If Naruto and Sasuke Travel Back in Time. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Kakashi and Shino were speechless as they stared at the two entities before them. What do you say when you discover that two people you thought you knew were time travelers? Kakashi was trying to organize his thoughts. He'd never considered time travel as one of the things the two of them had been keeping from the village. However, being so much older and war veterans would explain the drastic change in their level of skill and maturity since academy graduation. If Hinata had known about this ahead of time, or at least some of it, she wouldn't have been as concerned about the change in behavior. It would also explain why her skill set had grown much faster than he had expected. He closed his eyes and began to consider the outcome of every possible response to these claims, as well as what he would tell the Sandaime when he returned. Shino, on the other hand, was analyzing them and communicating with his Kikai. They would have picked it up if they had lied or fibbed at any point in the story. He honestly didn't know what to say about the possibility that the two had returned to avert, for all intents and purposes, the end of the world. He had always regarded Sasuke and Naruto as practical-ish in Naruto's case, and forthright with their emotions. He couldn't understand why the two of them would lie about something so important. Furthermore, it appeared as if one of them had already informed Hinata of this. That told him they were scrutinizing everyone around them for trustworthiness. While that wasn't necessarily a bad thing given what they were up against, it did indicate to him that there were people in the village who couldn't be trusted. Maybe even in their graduating class. He looked at the two he had come to know as friends, nodding to himself. So, is there anything I can do to help? The question caught them off guard, but they quickly recovered and smiled cheerfully at the Aburame. Naruto was overjoyed that they could rely on the Aburame for assistance with their self-imposed mission. Meanwhile, Sasuke realized that it would be easier to complete their tasks if they had more people working with them. I honestly don't know what to say. Sensei was a genius when it came to fuinjutsu and jutsu creation, but even he thought that creating any form of time travel was impossible. However, he also taught me that nothing is impossible as long as you keep trying, which you have already proven to me, Naruto. If things had continued as they were without you returning, would you have even passed your test? Kakashi finally said. Naruto laughed slightly. Yes and no. I would have failed the official test, but Mizuki would have tricked me into stealing the scroll of sealing, which would have led to me discovering Kyuubi and eventually being allowed to pass by the Sandaime. I would still be on Team 7, but instead of Hinata, we would have had Sakura. Hinata would have been on Team 8 with Kiba and Shino. Yes, you would still have had Kurenai, Naruto admitted. Shino sighed. He could only imagine how weak his future self was in comparison to Naruto and Sasuke if this was what they could do in their younger, less trained bodies. I see. Well, that's quite interesting. How far did you get with that team? Kakashi finally inquired. Honestly, I never made it past Genin. I was made Hokage after the Godai passed away because all of the other candidates were already dead, Naruto said, surprising the group in front of him. In fact, it wasn't until I became Hokage that Sasuke moved past Genin as well. Why would they? Hinata began, then paused, wide-eyed. Were they retarded because of Kyuubi? Her outburst startled everyone in the room, and Naruto stared at the heiress open-mouthed. He'd never heard her yell like that before, let alone insult someone. Next to him, Sasuke was also struggling to regain his composure. Shino had initially jumped, but Naruto could hear his Kikai buzzing angrily at the thought of being held back for something he couldn't control. Kind of. Yeah, Naruto shrugged. Hinata shockedly stared at the boy before palming his face. How could you still be loyal after knowing that? It was home, and not much was known about the Biju or how they affected the Jinchuriki, and I was a baby when they sealed the Kyuubi inside of me, and the only person I knew of who had the Biju sealed that young had mental stability issues due to a faulty seal, Naruto said almost sarcastically. He was angry about the decisions, but he also understood why. That didn't mean he agreed with it or would have made the same choice, but he did understand some of it. Shino exclaimed, "Sometimes you can be too naive and kind-hearted for your own good." Naruto just scratched the back of his head and laughed sheepishly. "So, why did they confine you, Sasuke?" Kakashi inquired. Sasuke twitched slightly, but he had already decided to be truthful about the situation. "I left the village to train under the traitor Orochimaru, nearly killed 5 genin and 1 chunin of the Hidden Leaf in an attempt to bring me back, betrayed Oro 3 years later and then killed my brother, then joined a terrorist organization trying to capture the Biju in order to destroy Konoha, attacked the Raikage's brother and the Kage Summit, then decided to betray the organization and return to Konoha and fight against them." Sasuke Kakashi was staring at his student with his mouth open, unsure what to say. In Sasuke's defense, he admitted he acted rashly and stupidly and was willing to accept any punishment that the village saw fit for his actions. It also didn't help that when he betrayed the village, he had 2 different entities trying to control him, Naruto added, looking irritably at his friend. "You had a long journey, didn't you?" Kakashi asked nervously. He'd never heard of a shinobi changing their minds so drastically in such a short period of time. "Well, the important thing is that the Dobi let me return and trusted me with an important task," Sasuke said quietly. "Even if I wasn't completely successful." "Finish that sentence, Sasuke, and I'll send you back." "You can't control the fact that the elders put you in such a bad situation, and that you were ambushed on a C-rank mission that turned into a trap." Naruto snapped his voice, changing from light-hearted to cold and authoritative in seconds. Sasuke jumped slightly before softly nodding to the blonde. When he brought up Hitomi's death, he became irritated and reminded the Uchiha that it wasn't his fault that things had turned out the way they did. "Sasuke," Kakashi began, only to have Naruto shake his head. "Just leave it at mission gone horribly wrong and leave it at that. There are a lot of things we won't tell anyone because they aren't important or would change things too much if said out loud," Naruto said, his eyes a little red. Kakashi nodded in agreement. "If you're still unsure, Sensei, just name a jutsu that we shouldn't know and if we can do it, we will," Sasuke challenged the copy nin. Kakashi narrowed his eyes as the boy looked at him with amusement. "Chidori," he countered, believing that the raven-haired boy could not have gotten access to the jutsu. Within seconds, Kakashi was staring at the Reikari, the stronger version of the Chidori. The Jonin gaped in surprise, his mouth wide open. When Naruto looked over to confirm that it wasn't a joke, his jaw dropped open and his eyes bulged as he saw a perfect Rasengan in the blonde's hands. As they cancelled their techniques, both boys laughed at his face. "Okay, I believe you," he squeaked in surprise. "I'm glad you do. If you want to help us, you need to train to get as strong as you can in the next few months. We don't know what we're going to do to stop it or if we'll just focus on reducing casualties yet, but Orochimaru is planning an invasion during the next Chunin exams hosted in Konoha," Naruto stated solemnly. As his words sunk in, the air became thick and the tension suffocated. He knew that learning that your home was going to be attacked at both its most vulnerable and most guarded moment would come as a surprise. "Orochimaru wants my Sharingan, and he intends to use the exams to try and give me the Heaven Seal. Naruto and I are still debating whether we should let me get the seal or not. Before you say anything, Sensei, I can alter the seal to prevent it from affecting him negatively, but it does come with its own risks. The seal only has a 10% chance of survival, which is why we are still debating it." Naruto stretched while standing. We should save this discussion for later and just focus on resting and training for now, the rest of the ninjas agreed, nodding, and mentally preparing for the upcoming battle with Zabuza. After 2 days, the team could be seen preparing for the fight on the day of the promised fight. As they finished their preparations, they nodded and went downstairs. Tsunami was in the kitchen preparing breakfast, while Inari sat quietly at the table, watching his mother. He was surprised to learn that the ninja had returned from their suicide mission. He had been taken aback when they announced that they had dealt with Gato. They had survived taking on Gato's entire army. Not only that, but they had returned with food, supplies, and money. Were they correct? Should he let go of the past and look forward to spending each day enjoying what he has? We are ready to go. Kurenai, you may come if you wish. There is no danger to the bridge builder now. Once we settle things with Zabuza, there will be no opposition to the bridge and you will be able to finish it safely. As mission protocols state, we will be staying until the bridge is finished, so don't worry about that, okay? Kakashi said as he approached the door. Tizuna nodded gratefully as the nins exited the building. They'd done more than he could have hoped for since arriving in Nami, and he wasn't sure if they'd ever be able to repay the shinobi. The journey to the bridge was quiet as the group devised various strategies to end the fight quickly. Despite what he had learned, Kakashi was still hesitant to leave the swordsman and his apprentice in the hands of Sasuke and Naruto. But he also knew he had to believe in their abilities. After all, they had invented time travel. When Kakashi arrived at the bridge, he noticed Zabuza waiting patiently in the center. Kakashi took a step forward and called out to the other man. Shall we move this battle elsewhere so that we don't damage the bridge? I don't see why we can't fight here. After we win, we'll destroy the bridge, Zabuza countered. Naruto snorted, drawing the swordsman's attention. Why destroy the bridge? You won't get paid for the mission now that Gato is dead, and raiding his mansion won't help you either. We already did that, the blonde joked before the demon could ask. Well, then, I suppose we have no reason to destroy the bridge, but then why should we fight in the first place? Zabuza wondered. You want to know what we are capable of, you want to finish the fight we had before, and you want to know why I called you out for a one-on-one fight, Naruto responded. The blonde's reading of Zabuza caused his eyes to widen slightly. He lifted his sword and followed the group away from the bridge, snorting amusement. While it was possible that they were tricking him, he doubted that they would have gone through everything they had just to end the fight with dirty tricks. The journey was brief, and when they arrived, they were far enough away from the village that no innocents would be caught up in the fighting, but close enough to return to the bridge builder quickly if necessary. Zabuza, I want to fight you alone. Kakashi-sensei has already agreed that I can. He will only step in if it looks like I am about to die. Naruto informed the ex-Jonin, who raised an eyebrow at the Cyclops. I believe in my genin. If they believe they can handle this, I will not doubt their ability. I will let them try. However, I am not willing to risk their lives, so I will step in if necessary. That is part of what being a Jonin is all about, he told Zabuza. After a brief moment, Zabuza nodded in agreement. He questioned his ability to defeat the team, but surely he could defeat the blonde, right? As the combatants stood across from each other, they attempted to formalize an attack plan. They were well aware that one wrong step would result in death. That was something Sasuke and Naruto couldn't afford to happen. All four charged at each other, as if prompted by an invisible signal, determined to end the fight quickly. However, Zabuza quickly realized that was impossible. The blonde was much faster than he had previously given him credit for. He was dodging the massive sword like it was nothing. Haku, who was nearby, was in a similar situation. The Uchiha was far more agile than she had expected given his stature. He was using a fire jutsu that was hot enough to melt her ice, which added to the confusion. Hakude jumped away from her opponent, raising her hands to weave a seal, only to pull them apart to block a kick. Sasuke had no intention of being caught in the crystal ice mirrors again, and he was determined to keep her from doing so. He knew several ways out now, but that didn't mean he wanted to go through it again. He smirked as he finally found an opening, despite resisting the urge to use his Sharingan. He darted forward, breaking through her defenses and pinning her to the ground with a kunai at her throat. Their conflict was over. Shaking his head, he anticipated Haku's question and felt a little sad that the girl had lived such a life. That would no longer be the case if Naruto and he had their way. She could be Haku, a person with feelings and a goal, rather than a weapon. Zabuza was enraged. He couldn't get a hit on the boy no matter what he tried. How did he move so quickly? The blonde came to a halt and looked him in the eyes. Haku was defeated. Haku was stronger than you, right? Well, just to let you know, I am stronger than Sasuke. You have no chance of winning this fight, Zabuza. Surrender, he said calmly. Despite the fact that it was a genin, Zabuza detected an air of authority in it. Not happening, brat. Then I have no choice but to demand that you lay down your sword, Zabuza Momochi, wielder of the Kabikirabocho, and obey the oath that you took to Uzu when you received your sword, Naruto barked. The tone of a leader and experienced shinobi had replaced the younger, more naive tone. He took a step forward, ready to swing his sword at the boy, when he felt resistance. Kabikirabocho would not fight. Zabuza locked his gaze on the boy in front of him. Who exactly are you? Naruto Uzumaki, heir of the Uzumaki clan and heir to Uzu no Kuni, you owe my clan and me your allegiance as a member of the Seven. I ask you now, Zabuza, will you betray the oath you made to Uzu and turn your back on the clan that crafted your blade, or will you lay down your weapon and obey the alliance with Uzu? He stood firm. Zabuza closed his eyes and thought about what to do. He had sworn an oath a long time ago to defend the Uzumaki clan and help Uzu if they ever needed it. He couldn't point his blade at an Uzumaki unless it was a sanctioned sparring match, according to the oath. Furthermore, his responsibilities to Uzu were supposed to take precedence over his responsibilities to Kiri. If he obeyed, he would automatically lose the fight and be subject to whatever command the child gave him. If he refused to obey, he would lose his ability to wield the Kabikirabocho and would be considered a traitor to Uzu. Once discovered, traitors to Uzu had very short lives. He could feel Haku's fearful gaze on him. Kurenai gaped openly. To think that the boy was born with that much power over the strongest swordsman in Kirigakure. It's no surprise he asked to fight the swordsman. He knew that even if he couldn't physically compete with him, he could force his hand. She had the impression that no genin should have that much power over anyone. Very well, I yield, Zabuza finally said, kneeling. Naruto smiled at Kakashi and Sasuke as he relaxed. Their risk had paid off. In the coming war, they would have 2 more allies. The bridge was finished in less than a week. The entire village had gathered for a festival to commemorate their independence and newfound freedom. Naruto and Sasuke stood back and watched the festivities, unsure of what to do next. Especially since Shino lacks a team. Without proper training, he would undoubtedly be unprepared. At the same time, without one, he would have more time to devote to clan training. Naruto sighed and leaned back, looking over at his friend, who was staring at the lights in the village. I can only think of one possibility, and it may cause us more problems than we need, but it would help us expand our list of allies, Naruto finally stated. Sasuke nodded in agreement without saying anything. He understood what the Rokudame was thinking, and he agreed that it might cause more problems than they needed, but they also needed Shino to be prepared for the coming war. You know, Haku isn't in the village, Naruto finally said, making the Uchiha flush and nearly fall off the roof. He turned his head to look at his friend, who was laughing. Who said I was on the lookout for Haku? No one, he teased. The thing is, I know you too well. You think she's pretty? Sasuke growled at the blonde with a sly grin. So, have you decided what you're going to say to Hiashi yet? Sasuke asked, sending the blonde pale and sliding off the roof. Snickering, Sasuke reclined on the roof. That was something he expected. Hiashi had nearly castrated him the first time because Naruto had gotten tongue-tied and made it sound as if he was asking for something completely different. "T-E-M-E!" exclaimed the blonde. He groaned as he climbed back up onto the roof and lay next to his friend. He was afraid that it would be even worse this time because he remembered the previous attempt. There was some silence between the two before Sasuke spoke up. Do you think they'll take your proposal seriously? Yes, he answered confidently. Sasuke remained silent as they gazed at the stars for the first time in a long time. The next morning, as the Konoha nin said their goodbyes on the bridge, Naruto didn't seem concerned about Zabuza's absence. They turned after saying their final farewell and became the first people to cross the newly built, but unnamed, bridge. Following their departure from the village, the group returned to Konoha in silence. Kurenai was quiet because she knew Kakashi wouldn't be biting his tongue for much longer. She also knew that the Sandaime would investigate the mission and her training once she returned as a result of Sakura and Kiba's injuries. Not to mention the backlash she'd most likely face from the Inuzuka clan. The two Kiri nins dropped from the trees in front of them, jolting her out of her thoughts. Did you think about it? Naruto inquired of the senior shinobi. Yeah, after discussing it with Haku, we decided to return to Konoha with you as Uzu shinobi, Zabuza said, making the blonde's grin widen. Naruto reached into his bag and pulled two new Uzu headbands from a storage scroll, tossing them at the two. He had salvaged many items from the destroyed village. Sasuke smirked at the two, shaking his head at the blonde's uncanny ability to predict things. Welcome to the circus. No one knows who the ringmaster is. Groaning Zabuza and Haku tied their headbands on, and the now larger group continued towards the hidden leaf. The trip was quick and silent, and they were at the gate before they knew it. Naruto waved at Izumo and Kotetsu, laughing at their puzzled expressions towards Zabuza and Haku. They went to the Hokage's office after checking in. Naruto snickered at Sandaime's expression after they were shown in and the door closed behind them. What the hell happened? He exclaimed, staring at the two nin in front of him. We went on a C rank and then an A rank, Kurenai messed up, we cleaned up, and Naruto appears to be considering reviving Uzu, Kakashi summarized the entire month. As the Sandaime whined, Zabuza turned to look at the team, stunned. In less than a month, Team 7 had completed 2 C-rank missions, 2 A-rank missions, and, given who Gado had apparently hired to kill him and Haku, an S-rank mission. Hiruzen sighed and glared at Kakashi, who simply laughed. The bandit elimination went off without a hitch. It was quick, and the genin performed admirably for their first assignment. Zabuza nearly choked on air. Following that, our A-rank mission to Uzu was also a success in terms of getting there. Unfortunately, there wasn't much that we could salvage from the ruins outside of a few Uzu headbands and clan census records. Everything else was destroyed. Upon our return to Konoha, we received your directives to head to Nami and assist Team 8 with a mission that got out of hand. Upon arrival, we discovered Haruno Sakura and Inuzuka Kiba. After forcing Zabuza to retreat, we sent the injured back to Konoha, where I assumed they received proper treatment at the hospital, after which I made the decision to continue with the mission and we escorted Tizuna back to his home. Over the course of about 2 weeks, I continuously trained the genin and we made a successful raid on Gato Mansion, but we were met with quite some resistance in the form of Maro the Mantis, Guro the Unyielding. Naruto laughed as he stepped forward. Here is the remainder of the fee for an A-rank mission and the fines for the misleading mission request that brought Nami back into good standing with the Hidden Leaf. This is a trade alliance request between Nami and Konoha and this is from Tizuna himself. I don't know what is in it but he asked me to give it to you. Hiruzen looked at the genin with wide eyes. Ryusuke the Dragon Tamer? Hiyari the Mistress of Torture? How the hell are you still alive? He exclaimed, making the shinobi in front of him flinch. Seven and Shino shrugged after a second. Team 7 and Shino shrugged as if to say, damned if we know. Hiruzen reclined in his seat and massaged his temples. Oh, by the way, where do we turn in bounties? Naruto asked, a knowing smirk on his face. They had salvaged their opponents' bodies and decided to turn them in for the bounty. That was in addition to the weapons and summoning contracts they had obtained. Kakashi can show you later, he grumbled exasperatedly. Naruto looked at Sandaime after nodding. I need permission to leave the Hidden Leaf for a period of no less than 2 weeks to travel for clan-related business. Furthermore, as I have decided to place Zabuza and Haku on loan to the village as per the Uzu-Konoha Treaty, and I have decided to ask Zabuza to take over Shino's training as Kurenai is obviously not capable, I believe that the arrangement of Haku and Shino on the same team will be more than enough to keep his training going until. Where are you going? All you need to know is to check on the well-being of a clan member in another country, and I will also need a letter delivered to the Kusakage regarding a second member of the Uzumaki clan. The Sandaime looked the boy in the eyes, unsure whether to allow it. He was becoming increasingly concerned about his sudden increase in strength and changing behavior, but there was nothing he could do. He took a deep breath and prepared to respond. As Naruto waited for the Sandaime's decision, he began to consider his next course of action if the Sandaime refused. He was well aware that the man was attempting to exert control over him, and he would not allow it. His actions and hidden motives for allowing the trip to Uzu had revealed everything he needed to know. The blonde couldn't figure out how the Sandaime had gotten away with pretending to be someone he could trust for so long. Surely you understand, Naruto, that the rules state that you must receive at least 3 days off to recover from your mission, injured or not, right? Surely you realize that rule only applies to village missions, not clan missions? Naruto attacked the Sandaime, causing him to flinch. He had outwitted him without even trying. What is so critical that it cannot wait for you to rest? As I previously stated, the well-being of a clan member. Kakashi simply nodded in confirmation to the unspoken question on Zabuza, Haku, and Kurenai's minds as the two locked eyes and began an intense staring match. Yes, this had become the norm for the two of them. I can go with or without your permission. I simply decided to try to do this without having to use my clan's name. Many people nowadays believe that their clan is more important than who they are. Naruto yelled at the senior ninja. Everyone in the room was silent as they watched the two engage in a verbal brawl. Regardless, you are still a genin, and as such, you are not permitted to leave the village on your own. I cannot send Kakashi on a village mission to accompany you, and I refuse to take the Jonin from any other team so that you can go for 2 weeks. Hiruzen retaliated. You don't have to. As a genin, I am not permitted to leave the village on my own. However, as a foreign diplomat of Uzu, as long as there are shinobi from Uzu to accompany me, you cannot prevent me from leaving nor retaliate for my leaving. There are 2 Uzu shinobi behind me, in case you didn't notice. Naruto responded once more. For once, the Sandaime didn't respond right away because the laws had been turned against him and he was left staring at the blonde in front of him. How had he mastered the laws governing the distinction between clan, village, and foreign affairs? How could he have missed this? Very good. But I want you back in. The blonde cut him off again, and the Sandaime never finished. You can't put a time limit on a clan matter, and you can't limit how much time I have to spend on a mission that doesn't involve Konoha. Sandaime gritted his teeth and scribbled a quick note before handing it to Naruto, who looked it over, nodded, and then made a copy. He gave the copy to Sasuke as soon as it was finished for safekeeping. When it was out of sight, Sasuke simply nodded and slipped it into his hip pouch, sealing it in a storage seal. Let's go, Zabuza and Haku. Naruto turned and exited the room. They followed the Uzu prince, nodding. You are free to go, Hinata, Sasuke, and Shino. Please wait outside while I speak with Kakashi about a few things. Sandaime gave the order, and the aforementioned ninja bowed and exited the room. Well? What did you discover? Did you find anything? As soon as the door was shut, the Sandaime said. Just that the port villages that used to work with Uzu have no love for Konoha or its shinobi and believe that the village was responsible for Uzu's destruction. When it comes to traps, Naruto is very clever and highly observant, and the invading forces left almost nothing to salvage. As I previously stated, the majority of what we accomplished was clan census records and a family tree. There was nothing left except the headbands Naruto had scavenged from a storehouse. The entire place is a shambles, and I believe it was picked clean at one point. Kakashi lied with ease. Since learning about Konoha's role in Uzu's destruction, he had been trying to concoct a plausible lie that would work with the Sandaime. I see. Has Naruto revealed anything about himself? Just that he believes you and the village are suffocating him unnecessarily and that he wants it to stop. He also believes that by tracking down any survivors who may have escaped, it may be possible to resurrect Uzu. However, to the best of my knowledge, has no plans to do so. He's been hiding his true strength the entire time because the village hasn't given him reason to believe he won't be sabotaged any further than he already has. Kakashi lied yet again. Hiruzen sighed and leaned back. He was terrified of it. Perhaps the boy had not been as devoted as he had once believed. Was his ecstasy and hyperactivity over what he thought was a familial relationship an act as well? How about Sasuke? He has also been concealing his strength in order to keep the village from worshipping him even more than they already do and treating him like Itachi. Hiruzen nodded and motioned for Kakashi to leave and for Kurenai to come in. The copy ninja sighed in relief at being able to get away with the lie. He would rather not be Kurenai right now. Naruto, for example. The only thing on Zabuza's, Naruto's, and Haku's minds as they raced through the forest towards their destination was how the Sandaime had fought so hard to keep Naruto from leaving on clan business. Zabuza knew from previous experience with other clan shinobi that the Sandaime's behavior was abnormal. Even Yugura, after he started acting strangely, would have strongly objected to that. Looking ahead, he noticed Naruto's teeth clenched and his hands balled into fists. He had the impression that there was more going on than he had previously thought. Do you know why the Rakudu Sennin was so revered, Zabuza? Naruto abruptly exclaimed. All I know is that he was apparently the first person to use chakra, and after defeating the 10-tailed beast, he created the moon. He returned my call. That's why, but it's never mentioned that he couldn't have done it alone. His brother assisted him. They didn't just keep the Jubi hidden away. They imprisoned their mother, the rabbit goddess. The moon is one of the seal's layers. Naruto responded, causing both shinobi to come to a halt. What? Haku and Zabuza both groaned. That's correct. Naruto turned around to face his companions. Only the Jubi's body and the rabbit goddess herself are truly sealed in the moon. The chakra of the Jubi was divided into 9 pieces. That means the Biju are just fragments of the 10 tails themselves. Not merely a fragment. They are unique individuals. They each have their own distinct personalities and quirks. Their personality includes both likes and dislikes. Doesn't that make them human by definition? If you put it that way, Naruto-san, they are human. Haku responded quietly. What prompted you to bring it up now? I just wanted you to know that I will not tolerate any disrespect for the Biju in my presence. Naruto stated quietly. He'd had more than enough of the Biju being referred to as beasts for his liking. He turned and continued his journey forward, thinking about how he could accomplish his goal without causing a war. Hinata entered the Hyuga manor quietly, making her way down to her father's study, knowing he was probably worried about her. She knocked on the door and waited for the stern man to let her in. She entered the room after hearing a very quiet "come in," and flinched slightly at seeing the council there as well. If this is a bad time, father, I can return. Hinata stated that she was aware that the council would most likely complicate matters. No, it's all right. Hisashi, her grandfather, said as he looked over at the inept female. He had never approved of her gentle demeanor and soft-spoken demeanor, but no matter what he tried, he could not persuade his son that allowing her to take over the clan would only lead to disaster. Furthermore, he was unable to persuade his son to remarry and bear a male heir. Hisashi narrowed his eyes at the older Hyuga before turning to look at Hinata. How did your missions turn out? He asked, surprising the elder council. It went swimmingly. Both missions were completed in a record amount of time. On our way home, we were told to go and assist Team 8, which was having some difficulties. Kiba and Sakura, sadly, were rushed back to the village in critical condition. Akamaru was also severely injured. Despite the appearance of Zabuza Momochi, Maro the Mantis, Guro the Unyielding, Ryusuke the Dragon Tamer, and Hiyari the Mistress of Torture, we were able to complete the mission. The bridge between Nami no Kuni and Hai no Kuni has been successfully completed, and I am now on a 3-day mission break. I believe Kakashi-sensei stated that between the time we left and returned, we had completed 2 C-rank missions, 2 A-rank missions, and an S-rank mission. Everyone's jaws dropped as she informed the clan's leader. None of the ninja she had mentioned were easily defeated on their own. Yet Hinata, the gentlest person they knew, stood before them, having survived meeting all 5 of them. I believe the Jonin did the majority of the work. Hisashi declared arrogantly. Kurenai-san was ordered to stay with the client during the raid on Gado's base, so she wasn't even present. Kakashi-sensei did defeat Guro the Unyielding, but it was Sasuke who defeated Maro the Mantis. Naruto-kun also defeated Ryusuke the Dragon Tamer by himself. Hiyari the Mistress of Torture was defeated by Shino and me. Hinata made a squeak. She knew her grandfather was looking for any excuse to undermine her efforts, and she wasn't going to let him get away with it. Hisashi was in front of his daughter looking for missing limbs and or irreparable damage before the old fool could say anything else. What was Kakashi thinking by leaving you to fight them alone? We had no idea they were there. They avoided being discovered by the scouting teams sent to determine how many people were working with Gado. We only found out they were there after the fights had begun, and we had already split up to ensure that no one escaped and that all of the entrances were covered. Hinata spoke quickly, attempting to prevent her father from reviving plans to construct a tower to house her. However, he could have been far more cautious. Hiyashi sat back, content that nothing was missing. Hinata, giggling, gave her father a genuine smile. She had been missing him. Shino and I'm back. Shino yelled as he entered his clan's compound. While he expected his parents to be concerned, he did not expect them to almost asphyxiate him. Are you okay? His mother almost screamed at the boy, who nodded silently. Shibi could see his wife's concern. When they learned that more than half of his son's team had returned and were in critical condition in the hospital, he became very concerned for his son's safety. He had rushed to the hospital to see if anyone could tell him where Shino was, only to be told that none of them had regained consciousness and had been transported to the hospital in a stasis scroll by one of Kakashi's ninken. He had been concerned about his son's safety ever since. I'm all right. As they walked into the kitchen to get some tea, he said and proceeded to tell them everything. He'd missed being at home. A few days later, as the entrance to Takigakure loomed ahead of them, Naruto, Zabuza, and Haku took a deep breath and then entered Takigakure. When approached by one of the guards, Naruto calmly explained that they needed to see his cousin, Takikage. The guard, his eyes widening, ordered them to remain where they were while dispatching a friend to inform their cage of the visitors. It wasn't long before the nin reappeared and led them to Shibuki's Takikage office. My ninja informed me that you have declared yourself my cousin. This is correct. I am Naruto Uzumaki, Uzu's heir. The blonde addressed the man in front of him. Before Shibuki could respond, the blonde placed the family tree on the desk and silently watched him read through it. For my own safety, the name of my father has been blurred. I'm attempting to locate and confirm the health and safety of all remaining Uzumaki now that Ryusuke, the traitor to Uzu and the reason it fell, has died. I decided to come here to check on the well-being of both of my cousins because Taki was the closest treaty partner we had. In that case, Fu, where is your sister? He could feel the atmosphere shift as soon as the words left his mouth. Shibuki had transformed from a friendly individual to a cold monster. Fu is on a mission and will be gone for some time. He spoke abruptly. Really? Your refusal to let me see her isn't because she's the Nanabi's Jinchuriki, is it? Naruto responded just as curtly. The ninja in the room were waiting for the right moment to flee, knowing that they would not survive being caught in a fight between them. Even if that were true, how did you know she was a Jinchuriki? He inquired coldly. Doesn't it take one to know one? I know where all of the Jinchuriki are at the moment. I know Fu is in the village, and I know she is in the building. He responded with a steady gaze. What does it matter to you what I do with the abomination that killed our parents? Naruto's eyes widened slightly, and a fierce killing intent spread through the room as he struggled to keep his temper under control. Either you bring her here in one piece and in good health, or I find her myself. I will not repeat my orders to you as Uzu's heir. Have I been clear, Uzumaki Shibuki? He hissed angrily. In fear, the cage backed away from the blonde. The killing intent emanating from the blonde was suffocating, and it felt monstrous, even inhuman. Who or what are you? The irritated Uzumaki with the power to wipe this country off the map but the common sense not to. Are you bringing her here or not? Zabuza and Haku exchanged a brief glance and felt themselves gulp a little in fear. He wasn't just irritated. He was on a murderous rampage. Shibuki motioned to one of the guards, who bolted from the room as quickly as they could. Naruto's killing intent faded slightly, and he began to tap his foot impatiently. After a few moments, the nin returned with a petite girl who appeared to have had too much sun recently. Her mint green hair and orange eyes were an unusual combination. Hello, Fu. I'm Naruto, your cousin. The blonde chirped, her eyes widening slightly in surprise. How is Chomei doing? How did you find out what Chomei's name was? She informed me. Do you want to come home and live with me now? I'm attempting to rebuild our clan, which includes you as a member. Certainly not. Can I truly? Responded at the same time. Shibuki, I wasn't asking you to shut up. This is a clan gathering, and you are not invited. I am an Uzumaki clan member. He yelled angrily. Are you? My mistake was thinking you were worthless as a human being and were impersonating an Uzumaki. I'll correct that right away. Naruto responded by removing the family tree from the desk and making some marks on it. The error has been corrected there. So, Fu, as a member of the Uzumaki clan, would you like to accompany me home? Haku was trying hard not to burst out laughing at Shibuki's expression. I'd like to, but Shibuki won't let me. Shibuki is powerless to stop it. As a member of the Uzumaki clan, I have final say over my clan members, and since you are one, I can bring you home without his permission because I believe you are in danger here. Naruto shook his head. If he doesn't like it, I'm sure I can contact your maternal aunt and inform her of what's going on. I'm sure the daimyo would like to know about your treatment at the hands of your ex-brother. Shibuki remained silent as his face turned an unusual shade of red. After a second, she nodded and turned to leave the room, smirking at the fuming cage. He snapped after a few steps, as if he had just remembered something he had forgotten. I almost forgot about it. Haku, the tags I gave you on the way here can now be used. Outside of Zabuza, Naruto, and Fu, Haku's eyes widened in realization as she vanished from view and quickly placed a tag on each of the people in the room's back. Nodding, they exited the room, and just as Shibuki was about to yell for a nearby shinobi to stop them, Naruto sent a wave of chakra into the tags, activating the seals on them. With nothing else standing in their way, Naruto's group was out of the country before the affected shinobi realized what had happened. What exactly did you do to them? Fu inquired, intrigued. I wiped their memories of your existence clean. Nobody named Fu has ever lived in the village, as far as they know, and if I am correct about how you were treated, the rest of the village won't care enough to say anything. Naruto replied with a sly grin. She laughed as she followed her cousin through the forest on their way to Konoha. Fu didn't mind where they went as long as she was with family who loved her. Fu had undergone a startling transformation by the time the group returned to Konoha's gate. She was no longer pale and starving. She had developed a healthy appearance and was quite tanned. She was also dressed in a very flattering white battle kimono that Naruto had purchased for her. They had spent the extra time training her massive strength in order to control it because her old village had clearly not taken the time to do so. They passed Izumo and Kotetsu on their way to Training Ground 7, knowing that Kakashi would be there. Most likely, he will be training Sasuke and Hinata, as well as taking over some of Shino's training. They were present, as he had predicted. Hello, Sensei. Naruto called out, causing the four ninja to turn to face the group. Dobi. Sasuke was relieved that his friend was safe. He was concerned that the Akatsuki had attacked him while he had been away. Shino, I'd like you to meet your third teammate, my cousin Fu, who carries the Nanabi within her. Naruto said cheerfully, causing the girl to stumble. How could he say something like that to someone so casually? Isn't he aware of how this could affect their working relationship? It's an honor to meet the queen. Shino spoke softly. A small tinge of red could be seen under his collar if one looked closely. Queen? Shino is an Aburame, and his clan's bodies serve as a home for Kikai insects. As a result, in their eyes, the Nanabi is their queen, and you are to be protected as a result. Furthermore, all of my close friends are aware of the Kyuubi, so it will not affect their relationship with you. Naruto explained, and the girl nodded in agreement. Maybe she did have a chance in Konoha after all. A chance to be happy and meet new people. Maybe even meet that special someone. Naruto happily nodded at his friends as the introductions concluded. He'd hoped they'd like Fu, and his faith had paid off. He smiled amusement as he looked around the training field, knowing that Shino had been put through the ringer with Kakashi's training program. He smiled again as he turned to face the other genin. How about we all go out for some ramen and get to know each other better before I explain some things that I know have been bothering you? Naruto suggested, drawing everyone's attention to himself. He dashed off, laughing at Sasuke's expression, without waiting for anyone to agree. We should follow the ramen addict. In this manner. Sasuke sighed as he led the newcomers through the village. He had expected the Rokudame to bring ramen to the occasion, but he hadn't expected him to take off the way he did. When he arrived at Ichiraku's, he looked at the bubbly blonde who was bouncing in his seat. You could have waited, and why do you always eat ramen? Sorry, I was a little excited, and it's not always ramen. I haven't had ramen since before we embarked on our first mission. He retorted angrily. Rolling his eyes, Sasuke quickly ordered some curry ramen and waited for the others to place their orders. He then turned to face his friend and Kage, waiting for him to begin. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get down to business. Shino, I'm going to add Fu to your team. As previously stated, Zabuza will command your squad. This way, I know you'll be well trained and prepared for anything. We'll also need to contact Asuma's team leader, Kakashi-sensei. His team isn't even close to being ready for a single attacker, let alone an army. Naruto snorted before sipping his sweet tea. Kakashi nodded and raised an eyebrow at the genin. Guy's group as well. Hopefully, we'll be able to whip Neji into shape before he pisses off Dobi. He may actually lose his mind. Sasuke added, muttering to himself. Naruto only grunted in response, and their food arrived before they could say anything else. They put their conversation aside and started eating their lunch. Back to the practice field. Now that our stomachs are full, we need to schedule group training sessions for all of our teams. That way, we're all getting better, and Shikamaru gets some motivation. Naruto flopped to the ground. Fu had no idea what they were talking about or why Naruto seemed to be giving orders to his Jonin as if he was in charge of the team, but since no one was saying anything, she decided to remain silent. Zabuza and Haku were equally perplexed, but they knew that the boy wielded more than some clout in the village and was guarding a secret. I can talk to them about it, and hopefully they will agree. Actually, I think I'll talk about doing survival training with all of the teams. I'd have to clear that with the Sandame, but if it's approved, we'll be able to train in seclusion for a while and show off your skills without the Sandame spying on us. Kakashi responded solemnly. Naruto sighed and leaned back against the tree. I'll be able to tell who should be told and who should be kept in the dark after we've spent enough time alone. Zabuza, Haku, and Fu will be informed once we leave Konoha, but everyone else must be tested, as you were, sensei. Kakashi nodded in agreement and looked over at Zabuza. Have you ever worked with a genin squad? No. The swordsman trailed off, having a bad feeling. Let me show you what my team does for training on a regular basis. Hopefully, you'll get some inspiration for your team. Kakashi explained sweetly. Zabuza, Haku, Shino, and Fu leaned back, slightly concerned, to see how Team 7 trained. Shino had a good idea of what was coming, but the other three didn't. He found the idea of them witnessing it firsthand amusing. He smirked to himself, knowing that the show would be well worth the minor setback in training. After a few hours, when Kakashi finally called a halt to the training, he noticed that the swordsman's eyes were simply protruding from his head. He chuckled to himself and took a seat next to the startled Uzunin. Fu and Haku had similar expressions to him. Meanwhile, Shino was struggling not to laugh at the state of his comrades. When he first saw Team 7's training, he thought it was absurd, and now he had someone else to share that opinion with. "Are you okay, Zabuza?" Kakashi inquired as he opened a bottle of water and took a sip. "Do you do it every day?" In shock, he nearly screamed. "No. Thank goodness. I was beginning to thin. We do this while on a mission or after we have completed a mission. This is laid back." Kakashi continued, making the man gape even wider. "Are you crazy? Kiri's training program wasn't even that harsh before they changed it. There would have been no one left to take the exam if it had been." "That is not entirely correct. I've simply designed a training program to bring out the full potential of my genin based on what they were capable of when we met and how quickly they learn. The only thing standing in the way of a shinobi's success is themselves." Kakashi responded to the surprised shinobi. Haku and Fu were nearby, struggling to remember how to speak. "What the hell happened?" Unusually for Haku, he finally exclaimed. That was all it took for Shino to burst out laughing. Both girls groaned as they realized the boy had known what was going to happen but had not warned them. "You should have told us." Haku grumbled. Shino laughed and turned to face her. "Why? At the very least, someone else understands how I felt when I first saw that." He made it this far before bursting out laughing again. Haku leaned back, her eyes rolling. "What do you intend to train for? Is it the end of the world?" Fu inquired, somewhat sarcastically, not expecting an answer. "Precisely." The entire team responded unanimously in a tone that suggested they were dead serious. Zabuza blinked at the Jonin next to him before narrowing his eyes. "I believe we are entitled to an explanation of what is going on here so that I can determine how much training my team needs to complete in a short period of time." Naruto nodded again and sat down to explain. "The thing is, Zabuza, in Nami no Kuni, you and Haku were supposed to die on the bridge." He began to make the two of them gape. He took a deep breath and told them everything he'd told Kakashi and Shino. The three newcomers' expressions ranged from anger to shock, frustration, sadness, and determination. After a lengthy explanation, "That's all there is to it," Naruto said while sipping his water. As he looked at the three people in front of him, the silence was deafening. "So, Haku died while protecting me, and I died while attempting to take Gato with me?" Zabuza muttered, never once considering how their battle could have ended differently. Or that they'd come up against a Jinchuriki, and the strongest one at that. "Did I lose Chome?" Fu shivered as she felt fear creep through her. "Yes, but I'm not going to let it happen again. That is why I am making changes. However, we have encountered an unexpected situation. When we started diverging from the original timeline, we expected things to change, but they are changing faster than we expected. The Nami mission was never intended for Team 8. Naruto responded solemnly. "I see. You require us to be ready for anything as soon as possible." After a minute of digesting what he had heard, Zabuza said. especially with what's to come," Sasuke said while sipping his own water. "We will be invaded during the next Chunin exam, which will be held in Konoha. That is only a few months away, and this village is not at all prepared." "That's excellent." Zabuza stood up and picked up the Kabikirabocho. "Then I guess we'll stop wasting time. Let's go, Team 8, we have some training to do." Naruto leaned back and smiled as the team chased after their new Jonin. "You are free to remove the privacy seals, Sasuke." Naruto smirked as Sasuke nodded as instructed. "Team 10, you can come out now. You're good at gathering information, but not nearly good enough to outwit a censor." With a shocked expression, Kakashi raised an eyebrow as they emerged from the foliage. "Trying to hone Asuma's stealth? They did a good job of hiding from my nose, but they never considered Hinata's Byakugan or the possibility of a censor on the team, and I doubt you mentioned it. How is your team still alive after that much training?" Asuma insisted. Kakashi burst out laughing. "They don't have much of a choice. Even if they die, they must complete their assigned exercises." In shock, Asuma stared openly at his friend. "Kurenai, how are you?" "I doubt she handled her tongue lashing well." Asuma flinched as Kakashi asked. "She was demoted back to Chunin and assigned to gate duty. When she got home, she slammed me for it, and after futile attempts to calm her down, I broke up with her because I don't need that in my life." Asuma stated that he was sitting. "Please accept my apologies. I guess she's still stinging from the tongue lashing I gave her when we arrived to support her team." Asuma shrugged casually. She was already becoming overbearing. "When we were together, she was so bossy, and God forbid I talked to someone who was single while I was with her. For a week, I wouldn't hear the end of it." "Wasn't it just Zabuza Momochi?" Shikamaru finally inquired. "Yep. He now works for me." Standing, Naruto chirped. "Well, we'll see you later. We must now complete our run." With a nod to their friend, Sasuke and Hinata dashed after the blonde, and once they were out of sight, Kakashi began snickering. "What is the run, and what is so amusing?" Asuma inquired. "Of course, their 20-mile run. I guess I forgot to mention that I turned it into a survival obstacle course." He added after a few seconds, "I also need to adjust the seals they're wearing. I haven't changed the weight, gravity, or resistance in a long time." Asuma gaped as Kakashi made a quick seal, followed by shouts from the forest. Naruto sounded almost as if he was cursing Kakashi's firstborn child. "In that regard, Asuma, I was considering doing some group training sessions with you, Guy, and Zabuza. Are you curious?" After 6 weeks. Now it appears that all of your teams have been growing at a steady rate. I don't see why I shouldn't let you go on a group survival training mission," Hiruzen stated after reviewing the results of Teams 7, 8, and 10. "But are you certain you want to bring Team 9 with you? They are a year ahead of your teams. When we met, Zabuza had been on my and Kurenai's teams for nearly a decade." Kakashi brought this up. Guy felt himself twitch uncontrollably. When Kakashi challenged him instead of the other way around, he felt something was off. When he won, he insisted on having Team 9 join them on a survival mission. He should have just said no. "Guy? Are you comfortable with this?" "Certainly, Hokage-sama," Guy yelled with all of his usual zeal. As he heard Naruto growl and saw Guy flinch, Kakashi shook his head. Naruto had been working on reducing the unnecessary shouting he and Lee tended to do since they ran into Guy's squad, and the last time Guy didn't tone it down, he woke up in the women's hot spring while several Anbu were relaxing. Very good. I see no reason why the request should not be approved. Hokage-sama, I'd also like to participate in missions while undergoing survival training. It would be beneficial for all of them to gain field experience. Furthermore, the village would continue to operate with no loss of manpower. Making the other Jonin groan, Kakashi added. When Zabuza and Asuma first started training together, Kakashi's obsession with working the genin almost to death had made them almost terrified. I see. Depending on where we are in the training, I can send Pakun back to the village to drop off mission reports and pick up new missions. Making the Sandame nod, Kakashi added. Despite his desire to keep Naruto and Sasuke in the village where they could be more easily monitored for any further erratic behavior, he knew that refusing in front of the other Jonin would raise questions that he was unwilling to answer. He leaned back after signing the necessary forms and handing them over to the copy Nin. Do you have any plans to return to the village? Hokage-sama, just in time for the Chunin exams. Kakashi responded. He sighed as he nodded and watched the 4 teams leave the room. He had a feeling that something was going to go horribly wrong soon, and he wasn't sure whether he should try to figure out what was going on or ignore it and hope it went away. Kakashi made a point of stopping by the mission hall on his way out to pick up a few missions for their trip to begin with. He actually found the Chunin's expressions amusing before mentioning that they would be divided into 4 teams, which is why he needed so many. He returned home and began packing their belongings for the trip. He wasn't going to let the future happen if he could avoid it. He refused to let Obito and Minato sensei down. On the estate of Hyuga, Hinata dashed to her room, hoping to get everything ready as quickly as possible. Because of the nature of the mission, she knew she would require more than she normally carried. Specifically, medical supplies. As she packed more clothes, her mind wandered as she tried to figure out what Naruto-kun had wanted to discuss with her father. Naruto gulped as he knocked on the door of the Hyuga Patriarch and awaited permission to enter. He entered the room after hearing the stern man call out and bowed to the man in front of him. He was more nervous this time than he had been the previous time. Hiyashi-sama, I'd like to request permission to date Hinata-han. He expressed his hope that it had come out steady and without any of his nervousness. Hiyashi felt a trickle of sweat run down his face as he stared him down. He had the impression that the room was getting smaller. Crap, I'm panicking again, he exclaimed. I see, and what are your plans for my daughter?
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.